My name's Thaddeus Barsotti. I grew up in Western Yolo County, Cape Bay Valley. You bring all of these ingredients together and it creates like food that people eat, and it nourishes them, and they feed it to their kids and their kids eat it, and everyone's healthy, and you're like, oh wow, like there's no disputing that we're all part of the same system when you realize all that stuff mixed together is what sustains us.
Can't deny the interconnectedness that food brings us.
Cannot. We need to, and I think we need to spend more time making it more transparent and more truthful.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. Well, all right. Do you garden?
No.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did. Hello and welcome all you beautiful botanists and gardeners out there. Welcome to the show. It's that time of week, my friends. Time to talk plants. I'm your host, Kevin Jordan of the Green Acres Garden Podcast. Back in studio for another great episode. To my side is Austin on the audio. How's it going, Austin?
Hello, and welcome back to all of our listeners. It's the best time of the week. Kevin, what's going on?
So I've got some great news to share. Actually, I was sad. I was almost going to share something. It was going to be a call to action, but we don't have to do that. This is actually all celebration. Ooh. A few months ago, I heard from our friend and colleague, Todd McPherson of the Burbank Urban Garden of Luther Burbank High School here in Sacramento, California. We had him on in the past episodes, actually in our first season when we were just newbies.
That was way
a great
back.
episode. He's a wonderful educator. I just love this guy for what he's done and the work that he's put in at the school. He got word a few months ago that, hey, they're cutting the program. It's gone. It's over.
Oh, no.
He contacted me, let me know a little bit about it. And so we kind of rallied the troops, or actually he really rallied the troops. He got all of his supporters from individuals and groups to come in and write letters, emails, and show their support for the program and its value in the community and for the students. And guess what? I just found out on the way to today to record with you, Austin.
Okay.
The program is saved.
Oh.
So now they're going to have a nice, robust ag program there where they can teach the students all about plants, gardening, growing, horticulture, agriculture.
Love that.
And so it's pretty cool. So the Burbank Urban Garden, the bug lives on, thanks to the efforts of Todd McPherson and all of the supporters that came together. So power to the people, power to the peaceful. Really cool to see what could happen when people come together.
To hear that, man. Okay, well, I'm glad it got taken care of just as you're coming over here. That is so cool, and I love hearing that the people were able to make some change.
Yes,
that's a beautiful thing.
You never know what you're capable of.
We need to go back out there. That was so long ago now.
Oh, yeah.
Like, man, we need to go visit Bug again.
We got to hit him up in the spring, I think, when they're getting things planted and going.
Let's do it.
For sure. And that kind of leads, I think, really well into this week's episode where we got to sit down with a proper grower of plants. Somebody who's I pride myself in how many plants I've grown.
Yeah.
You know, he's got me beat. I'm just gonna say this gentleman, but he's not a gardener. This is a proper farmer.
He's
so
a
we
farmer.
got to sit down in person, and it was an honor. Thaddeus Barsotti, he's an entrepreneur, business owner, an author of. He wrote a book about his life and everything going on the farm. It's called Betting on the Farm: An Heirloom Childhood. Of course, because he's a second-generation organic farmer. Yeah, it's really cool. He's such an amazing person. He's a young farmer, but he's been doing it for quite some time. And he gained so much experience through growing up on the farm with his brothers and his parents and his mom especially, Kathy Barsotti, sounded like a really incredible person. She was at the tip of the spear in the mid-'70s for organic farming in Northern California when at a time it wasn't a thing.
Right.
And so they grow a multitude of crops. It's just so cool. There's so much going on. And even though Thaddeus is a farmer doing farm stuff and we're a garden podcast, there's so much of what he does on his farm are the same things we discuss on the podcast each and every week as it pertains to gardening. So I think there's a lot here for us to enjoy and learn from. So I just had a blast getting to meet him.
Yeah, I did too, and I learned a lot about CSAs, and I can see how you were making a connection there
Oh,
with
yeah.
the community supporting the bug gardening program, right?
Yep.
And then what Thaddeus does is a CSA, or a community supported agriculture, and he is fast. He's trying to like change the way food is grown and people interact with food. And I just really love it. He's a very smart guy. So I don't want to, mess it up. We got to listen to Thaddeus. So let's go ahead.
And that CSA, Austin,
Yeah.
is the biggest in the United States, in the nation.
That's
Pretty
right.
incredible.
So crazy.
Yeah, they've built something so wonderful.
And it's right here in our backyard.
You know it.
I love that. So let's go ahead and introduce everyone to Thaddeus. He's an amazing guy, a lot to share here, and a lot for us to learn. So let's go ahead and jump into our interview with Thaddeus right now. Here we go.
So I'm sitting down with Thaddeus Barsotti, an organic farmer, author, and business owner. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
So Thaddeus, please introduce yourself to our listeners, a little bit about who you are and where you come from.
Yeah, my name's Thaddeus Barsotti. I'm a second-generation farmer. So my parents started an organic farm in the 70s, and then my mom started a CSA, Farm Fresh to You, which grew up. It's a pretty big CSA now, probably the largest one in the nation.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's fun. And so we deliver the best selection of organic fruits and vegetables to people's homes.
Is that okay? So a CSA, a community-supported agriculture,
Correct.
can enlighten us.
Yeah, so the idea is that, one retail experience is you go into the store and you have literally the whole world's product at your fingertips and you buy what you want. Another way to buy produce is to say, well, I'm going to commit to the best local selection of fruits and vegetables available, and I'm going to let these guys figure that out because that's what they're good at. And so what Farm Fresh to You does is it puts together the best mix of local organic produce, fruits, vegetables, greens, every week, and we create a base box that has like 10 items. And then if you like the things, you could add more. If you want to change it, you can. But it's like the best way to kind of have the first stroke at your refrigerator for the week being local and organic and excellent.
I love it. If I got a box right now, what do you think would be in it?
If you got a box right now, you'd see a lot of citrus in it. So we have the citrus going on. I'm really enjoying the caracaras.
Yes.
They're
I have one in
very
my front
good.
yard.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Delicious.
We also have some, our family has a 100-year-old old line Washington navel grove. It's the sweetest, it's like so sweet. It's very impressive.
I want it cutting.
Yeah, right?
Graft it. That is cool. Yeah, you can tell it's weird when you do get your taste a proper orange. It just blows you away.
Yeah, citrus is so fun. And then we have fruits and a lot of vegetables right now, kales, chards.
Oh, yeah.
Fennel, that kind of stuff. And so we'll settle
All the
on-
things some of our listeners maybe might be gardening or
Right.
enjoying as well.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is there's really you're not going to get tomatoes and melons this time of year. The whole point of Farm Fresh to You is like, hey, how do you live with the seasons? And there's really always an amazing selection of fruits and vegetables
We're pretty
available.
lucky
So
here.
lucky here.
Yeah.
And so we just try to make that easy. And people ask me like, oh, what's your favorite fruit or vegetable? And I'm always like, well, right now I'm really into this. And
what's ripe?
Yeah, and I look forward to being so tired of that. So like right now I'm into the citrus and I'm ready to be done with citrus and be excited about tomatoes. And then there'll
Yeah.
be a time when I'm like, okay, I'm done with the tomatoes. I want some kale.
Do you guys grow tomatoes?
Oh yeah, we put them in the greenhouse 2 weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
So we got little
Getting
baby
them
tomato
started.
plants. Yep, they're gonna grow up.
Grow
and
so fast.
They grow quickly. We'll put
like
them in
children.
the field. Put them in the field in the end of March and start harvesting them in July.
I love it. Well, let's take a step back. You mentioned your mom helped develop the CSA, which is now one of the largest ones in our nation. Which do they do this in other countries? I mean, that seems like you might be one of the larger ones in the world if it's the largest one. In the
Yeah, we
US.
probably are. The CSA originally came from Japan, and so in its purest form, a CSA is this idea that there's a farmer, and then there's a community, and the community gives the farmer enough money for them to farm, and then with each crop, you get your share. And so sometimes it's a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's not much stuff. So that's the purest form of a CSA. And my mom was very good at understanding CSAs are cool, but in the middle of winter, there's only so many turnips and beets and
How much kale and chard can I really eat?
right?
Smoothie it up, I
You can
guess.
find the limits of people pretty quickly when you start filling a box of produce with just 3 things. And so she was always smart about moving out in concentric circles to make sure we got a good selection. And then as soon as the more local stuff was available, right? You move back to that. And so, yeah, she started that, and interesting history. My mom got cancer. My parents
Sorry to hear
divorced.
that.
Yeah, it was a crazy story. That's what this book's about. And then when my mom divorced, she bought the farm out for my dad. And so she was like a single mom, woman, entrepreneur, running a farm. Started this home delivery business.
Impressive.
Very impressive. And when she passed away in 2000, she was relatively young, 50,
was gonna say,
51.
way too young.
Yeah, way too young.
Her name was Kathy?
Kathleen Barsotti. Yeah,
That was my mom's name.
Oh, really? With a K?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I saw that when I was learning a little bit, and I was like, hey, that's pretty cool.
That's a great name.
I love it.
Well, you mentioned, okay, so you're an author, which is pretty cool. It's actually, I don't want to brag, but I read about 10 books a day. Granted, they're for a 3-year-old.
I was going to say, that's impressive.
but they're really short and a lot of pictures, but I do read about 10 of them a day. But no, you have a nice, thick, beautiful book here, lovely cover. I mean, I want to take a bite out of it. It's just a beautiful image of a farm, crops, and it's called Betting on the Farm, an Heirloom Childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about what led to this, and what is this book really about?
Sure. So I saw, as we were growing up and all of our kids coming in, I was like, man, this story's crazy, and I feel like it needs to get written down before it changes or it gets forgotten. And so Betting on the Farm really has two themes. One is the year that our mom passed away and we took over the farm. That's one story. And then running parallel with that story is kind of a history of the organic foods movement and what the history of our farm starting in the 70s, kind of moving through.
Yeah, because they were kind of like, I'd say, a bit of a pioneer of their times. I mean, that's right. I mean, they're kind of going against the grain. Like, we talk about it, I mean, every week, that's all we talk about is compost and cover crops and organic practices and things like that. But it's like, at that time, mid-70s, you're kind of going against the current. That's
completely
incredible.
I mean, organic wasn't even a thing. We'd be at the farmers markets and Dad would say, "Okay, cut this melon open and tell people it's organic." And when they ask what organic is, say it's grown without synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. People are really I spent much of my childhood telling people what organic was.
Just explaining it, and yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't even really know what it was. I just was saying what Dad said, but I didn't really understand until I studied ag engineering at Cal Poly. And so I got to see quote unquote real ag or production ag, I call it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand what our farm was about until college, and I started learning mainstream.
You see the other side of that coin, yeah.
And there's a lot of lessons there to be learned from a business point of view and efficiency, but it's also they've taken a lot of lessons from organic. And I think when we look at where we're sitting right now, the farming standards of California in aggregate, I believe, have gotten better. And I think it's also true that organic is, I don't want to say, I think organic is different than what it was when it started. Now it's really literally an amendment-based standard. It's a legal definition. There's a list of stuff that you can use or you can't use, and that's what organic is legally. But there's still so many other things, like where it's grown, how you treat the soil, how are the people treated, what are the varieties that you're growing. There's all these other components that
it's
were
not
part
just
of,
one thing.
Yeah, they were part of the original organic foods movement, but I think with the mainstream commoditization of organic have been lost a little bit. So we're excited that Farm Fresh to You still, keeps those alive also.
Okay, so Farm Fresh to You, that's the name of the CSA?
Yeah, farmfreshtoyou.com.
Okay, I was just going to ask you, so if people want to find out, learn more, just farmfreshtoyou.com?
Farmfreshtoyou.com.
Farmfreshtoyou.com. Okay, I can do that. Very cool. Well, you're bringing up organic. You always hear these terms like regenerative farming. Are there similarities? Are there overlaps? Are there differences?
Yeah, absolutely. So regenerative is a relatively new term, and I used to always talk about beyond organic farming practices. So using cover crop or crop rotation or how we treat the labor force.
Well, I saw your website. What's the best fertilizer?
Farmer's Footsteps.
Well, that absolutely. No, but on your website, it was great. I loved it, and it said the best fertilizer is cover crops.
Oh,
the first one you go to.
Without a doubt.
And I was like, I love that. That makes sense. And the argument is that it's hyper local because it's like you're not bringing in bat guano from a cave and
Yeah, it's so many benefits. You take the nitrogen gas out of the atmosphere, put it into the ground. You get increased organic matter. You get the roots promote soil or water moving through the soil.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of good stuff that come with cover crops.
You know it for sure. Okay.
But I think regenerative, to answer that question, there's a lot of discussions right now about a standard or what that's going to look like. And I view regenerative as like things. Organic is a process that's certified. There's a third party that comes out every year. There's an inspection. It's a real thing. And while organic has changed, it's still amazing the benefits that it's done. It's taking so many toxins out of the environment. There's like lots of really good things that being certified organic does. And then there are lots of things that are regenerative. And if we say cover crop, right? Well, if you're not an organic farm and you're heavily using, pesticides and herbicides, and then you grow a cover crop and that's the only thing you do, like, sure, that's better, but we have to be careful to not create an environment where like now you do this one little thing and you're regenerative,
and that's
viewed, viewed as better than everything.
And it's like, creating a new label for something that truly isn't doing what it purports to do or whatever.
I mean, greenwashing is a real thing in the industry.
For sure. Well, also, I loved it that you guys are kind of going beyond organic, and not just the way that you just grow your plants, but it seemed that you kind of are approaching it from a sustainability mindset. And when I first, like I said, I mentioned to you, I'm a teacher. I teach horticulture, and when I first got there, we started doing this thing. They're like, they wanted me to create a sustainability like curriculum or academy. But it's kind of hard to, I think it's one of those things where it's kind of a nebulous term. It's a little kind of, it's hard to kind of pin down. It's like holding on to sand or whatever. But for you, on your farm, y'all are really out there doing it. So what does sustainability mean for you and the people that you work for and with?
It's a great question. When I was a very young man, my mom asked me, she said, hey, what's the most sustainable part of the farm? And I went through the answers that you would, the soil, the people, the water. And her point was it's the economics. And it was, not the answer you'd expect, but what she's saying is, and she's right, if what you're doing on your farm isn't going to economically survive in our society, then it's going to get replaced with a system that will. And so I think we always need to make sure that what we're doing makes economic sense. And I think that needs to be, as big of a deal as all the other practices. Because
just so it can exist and have longevity.
Yeah, it's like, let's just say you have the best farming system in the world that, does all the things and it loses money. And so we need to, farming is the food system is a very complicated and massive industry with its interconnectedness, and then you add to it the retail system and the distribution systems, and all of these things need to work in harmony together, and it's a pretty daunting task. So when I think about sustainability, you have to kind of weigh everything together and ask yourself, hey, how are we doing this in a way that's going to last forever? And the big piece of that is the customers. So we need customers and people that are saying, well, I agree with what this company's doing, and I'm going to commit to using them because they're doing these things differently and better. And without those customers, Farm Fresh Tea would be nothing. And I think that's true of all sustainability practices. They need someone that's going to say, this is important and it fits my lifestyle and how I identify and my philosophical views, and I'm going to support that with my dollar. Without that, none of this stuff exists.
Hear, hear. I like it. Now, when it comes to actually growing these plants that you're getting to market and your people are starting to eat and enjoy, what are some of the practices that you guys are doing that maybe we could learn from to take into our own gardens? You brought up the cover crops, love it. Like you said, it just breathes in that atmospheric nitrogen, that bacteria growing on those roots of legumes and whatnot.
Right.
What else are you doing to actually to just improve what you grow? And does your plant selection, does that actually correlate with your goals? I mean, are you doing one crop? Or are you guys growing a bunch of different things?
Yeah, so I grow a lot of different things, and I think, my advice to gardeners, and it's really also my advice from a farming point of view, is there's two things that really control the success of your season. The first thing is the planting schedule. You have to plant the right things at the right time. If you plant winter squash after the 4th of July, it's just not going to make it, right? It's going to get too cool.
It's weird. Winter squash does not grow in winter. I learned that one the hard way many years ago as a young gardener.
Yeah, me too.
Well, squash in the winter? That sounds amazing.
And then also, in August, it's time to start dropping kale seedlings.
Yeah.
To have them for September so that you could harvest them in October, November. So it's really important to have a plan where you're thought through about like, hey, well, what do I want to harvest and when's the best time to grow it? And in our region, we know those answers, but you can't, grow sweet peas in the middle of summer. You can't, if you want peas, you need to plant them in the fall to have them in the spring. And so the schedule is really important. And I always joke with my brothers, I'm like, the only thing we have control of on this farm is the planting schedule.
Yeah.
Once we approve that and send it out, like, it's just like going to war. You don't know what's going to happen. You show up and do the best you can.
Yeah, Mother Nature, she's unforgiving.
You're right. Predictable, but unforgiving.
Yeah.
And then I think the second thing is thinking about rotations. So when people on a farm, like, we take that seriously. So for my heirloom tomatoes, I won't plant tomatoes in the same ground where tomatoes have been planted for 5 years.
Wow, that long.
Yeah, because the things that eat the roots, the Phytophthora, they'll grow and double in population every year that they have tomato roots. But if you keep tomato roots away from them every year, the population starts to go down.
So what was that? There was a mythological dragon in the soil. Phytophthora?
Phytophthora.
What is that?
It's a fungus.
Fungus? A
Yeah,
fungal?
soil
Okay.
fungus. Yeah.
Just
And
breaking it down?
It's and when you get a tomato plant with it, you cut the plant open, you could see that it's eaten inside the where the xylem and phloem, and it's like black. And so
Yeah.
it stops the ability of the nutrients to move up and down. It's a big problem, and so this is how you deal with it. And so sometimes gardeners are like, yeah, I'm gonna have the place I always put my tomatoes, and they've been doing well, and now they don't do well anymore. And it's like, well, it's probably because it's where you've always been putting your tomatoes, right? So the planting schedule and then moving stuff around.
Love it. Now, you're organic, but how do you deal with pests? We all got to deal with it. Even if best practices, there's got to be something. So what is your approach out there on the farm?
Yeah, so I use a really holistic approach. I take care of beneficial, it's like hedgerows, and try to keep beneficials in there. And I think that, my point of view is having a healthy population of insects, even if there's some bad ones in there, it's never going to let one thing get out of control. The other thing is you have to keep things clean, like especially with organic. You don't have the tools, so you have to keep crops really clean. And then I will use, so like the bane of my existence are aphids.
Yeah.
The green, like how
You're
do
at
you
the right place.
Yeah, how do you
welcome home, friend.
How do you deal with the aphids? And so like when I have big production acres, I'll kind of have these plans where it's like, okay, every 10 days I'm going to do something. There are organic pesticides. They're not super effective. There's some very effective ones for worms, but like the BTs. But the products that work for aphids, I'll do those every 10 days. Or I'll do 10 days, put those out,
Because you
wait
really
10
got to get it
days.
right on them.
Yeah, it's got to really hit them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't like kill them all. It just
slows them down a little bit.
And then 10 days later, I'll use a soap application in the irrigation, like on my sprinklers.
Oh, wow.
And then 10 days after that, I'll go back to my pesticide, my organic pesticide.
Nice.
So if you're always doing something, and then the next thing is you got to be on top of harvest, because suddenly when you clean the kale or you clean the crop off, there's just not much of it, and now your treatments work that much better.
Yeah.
So there's always fights between production and sales. It's like you got to they're like, there's aphids. It's like, well, if you don't sell it all, they're going to proliferate, and we're really going to be in trouble.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm loving it. This is so cool. Now, they mentioned, do you make your own olive oil? Who's making olive oil?
I have.
And where can I get some?
Yeah, I have olive. So we're farming a little bit less up in the Cape Bay Valley. So the Cape Bay Valley is a beautiful spot. It has a lot of boron in the groundwater and in the.
Where'd it come from?
It came from the coastal range somewhere.
Okay.
And so the boron levels are high enough to where it's like toxic for citrus and
Really?
it causes problems with walnuts and some of the vegetables. And so we've been strategically putting our vegetables in places that are better for them, like in Salinas and Hollister areas where it's cooler. So we have some farmland available, but we also, it's like you can't grow a lot of things. Like what can handle boron? Olives and pistachios are the two things that come to mind. And so I went with olive oil. And so I grow Arbequina, high density. Had our first crush last year. Got
That must
pretty
have been
good yields.
exciting.
Yeah, it was fun. Big machines, like Godzilla comes in. And so, yeah, I learned a lot about it. We ended up with about 150 gallons an acre on 15 acres. Found someone to buy it. I kept some back, and we'll bottle it and sell it.
How did you taste some yourself?
It's very good, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun.
How
Olive oil is great.
satisfying.
And then we're now just learning. I mean, I think everyone suspected it's been healthy for a long time, but it seems like now
That it's better than some other oils.
Yes.
Shall not be named. That's great, dude. Good for you. And what's cool, I feel like olive oil too, or olives in general, they're just like, it's very Northern California. I mean, they're drought tolerant by nature.
Mm-hmm.
They the older they get, the more beautiful they become. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just pretty cool.
They're really easy to farm. They don't have pests. They don't need a lot of nitrogen, and so they're from that point of view they're pretty simple. But we grow the high density, so they're on a trellis, and so learning to prune them is an interesting and necessary.
They're packed in real tight. And
Yeah, we have like 516 trees per acre, so they're 5 feet apart, but they grow up, and the way olives set fruit is they set fruit on last year's wood, right?
Okay.
So you need to always have like fresh growth coming out, even with the olives. And if the trees get too big, then the harvest can't go through. So on the high density, it's like
a balance of pruning and
balance, exactly. And it's not something that's where it's like, hey, Fred, here's how you do it. So we're learning, and
I've hopefully things change for the better. Mm-hmm. I feel like this next generation, there's going to be a big passover of land and farming. Are we at a need for? I said you're a young farmer. Do we need more young farmers like you?
We need more people that are interested in the food system and willing to learn how it works. Because if you're going to just come to me and say, hey, I want to be a farmer, I would say, it's really a hard job. And the way that our economy is set up, it's focuses on scale, and they're huge machines, huge company, huge capital expenses, and the whole goal is to have the inputs go into the food system as low a price as possible. Even if it's a loss, that's good, and the government will subsidize to keep farmers kind of barely alive. And I don't, I'm not trying to be negative, but it's just like that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the right thing, and I think more people need to understand what's actually happening. And it would be great if there was a demand from consumers and a system set up that really, benefited the existence of small farms.
Where the
supported
economics
it.
makes sense for people to go, yeah, well, I want to do that. It's a great career.
And it's a good profession. It's a
pay.
very noble, it's hard work. It's an important part of our society. Like everyone needs to eat. It's, the most fulfilling part of my job is like meeting people that use my products. It's like, oh, that's cool. I took sun and water and soil and
it's a great way to
seeds and,
connect
like,
with people.
grew some stuff and people eat it and they love it and they're feeding it to their kids and everyone's
Yeah.
healthy and you're like, it's really positive. And I think, we need to figure out how to get more people curious enough about the food system to see what's actually happening so that they could, put their hand up and say, hey, we don't like
go.
this.
Yeah, everybody, not
Yeah.
just people that want to get into it, but customers and just
Right,
everyday
'cause if
people. Because
just-
we're all customers of farmers.
Totally. And if you think about we're really good farmers. So like one small farm can feed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? And so if and even if it's like they need 20 or 40 or 50% more, to make that work, I think that that's a good use of money, but we need to figure out how to get people to see that
I'm into
and
it.
support it.
So cool. Well, Thaddeus, one last thing. I'd be a risk if I didn't ask you. From what you learned, I know you're basically you're farming at scale, and all of us. I'm a little plebe or pleb. I'm just gardening. I'm a gardener. But what piece of advice would you give to us, all of us gardeners and growers at home, that we could maybe do in our own gardens to improve what we do? Tips from a pro, as it were.
I think it's about who gets your food. And so, my suggestion would be to make sure you're sharing it and, having people participate with it. Like our community, the sense of community that's created around food is so powerful. And I think in today's age in particular, it's being lost. Like people aren't eating as families. They're not, sitting down to have meals at the table. And I think gardening is another way to like people love it. Bring it over. I always enjoyed having customers out to the farm. And so if you take like heirloom tomatoes or any crop really, well, for me to get it through the wholesaler, it has to be perfect. Like
Pristine.
Like it just has to be a certain way, packed, uniform, no blemishes, or it'll get kicked. But if I send a customer out in the field, they pick the ugliest things and they are so happy about it. And that's what I think is powerful about interacting with actually where the food's grown is, suddenly if there's a hole in your kale leaf, do you care? Not really, because you picked it. Or if there's a tomato that's not perfect, but you could cut the bad part off, like people are willing to do that. And I think that's a powerful part of feeding ourselves is really knowing where it comes from.
Absolutely. Well, I guess some of that food comes from Cape Organic Farm.
That's right.
Thanks to Thaddeus Barsotti and company. Thaddeus, thank you so much, man. I learned a bunch, and your story's incredible. I hope people go out and check out your book, Betting on the Farm. I have to imagine there's some pretty cool farm stories in there that only could have happened growing up on a farm and dealing with that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for making time for us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate whatever we can do to get people to eat healthy food, and let's do it in a way that's good for the environment and takes care of our community.
All right, we are back from our interview with Thaddeus. Big thank you to Thaddeus. Big shout out for an incredible interview. Thank you so much. And Kevin, I want to kind of pick your brain now about a couple of things from the interview. I'm just fascinated. First off, can we talk olive oil? This guy's he's got an olive orchard. He says very densely packed and that, he can make his own olive oil. Is that something that we could do too?
Let's go for it.
What if we all come together? We all grow, one olive tree, yeah. And then we come together as a community, and we make our own oil.
I love it. I love the idea of it because it came up and he said we had a space where we could grow some things, but the soil wasn't suitable for all the other crops that grew.
I know. He tested it and he's like, that's fascinating.
So he's like, it led him to a tree, right plant, right place. Yep. So he led him to olives that can tolerate that, and they do really well, and they don't require a lot of water. They're just good to go once they get established. And now he's got his hands on some olive oil and producing it. That's really cool. I think it's awesome. He's a bit of a Renaissance man.
Yeah,
and that
definitely.
He's a jack of all trades. They do so much, and it seems like they're always kind of looking around the corner for what's next. I love it. It was so cool. I was super impressed by him. And like I said, there's a lot that you can take from their practices at the farm that we do in the garden. He discussed the use of cover crops for soil building, using local fertilizers like chicken manure, steer manure that you can get hopefully locally, organic pest control, the way they even control the pests without using chemical pesticides. That's pretty cool. The water usage, where it's every drop, the right amount of water in the right place. You want to make sure the plants have enough water to really be hardy and healthy, but not so much that you're inundating them and just flushing, valuable nutrition and nutrients from the soil. So it's really important.
What about the crop rotation? That to me is very interesting because I'm sure that's something we could immediately take to our gardens, right?
Yep.
Is that something you practice already?
Yeah, I do it the best we can in our gardens. Sometimes, if you have limited space, you got to do what you got to do. So okay. I don't blame you. But
you were kind of surprised by his 5 years.
He did 5 years.
Is that not normal?
No, I think it depends on you. But I think some folks might be 3 or 4. You wait. But yeah, like they said, we'll plant tomatoes in a spot, and we will not replant them there for another 5 years.
That's so cool.
Just because the disease build up and whatnot. And it's one of those things that you can do that it's like prevention is worth it's like that way you're not even having to worry about spraying chemicals and things and like that and worrying about the disease because you can deal with that by rotating those crops in and out. And so I thought that was great. Even the fact that they keep wildland on their property, so that a good percentage of the border of their property and where they have their ranches and farms, they just let it go wild and they plant the hedgerows, they do the natives, there's trees in there, and there's hawks and there's bobcats and all these wonderful creatures and birds and bees, of course, and insects. And so I think all those things together are very similar to what we're kind of advocating for here. Build your soil organically, control the pests intelligently, with just the right amount of spray at the right time. And if you can avoid it, don't even spray at all. But it's really be targeted. And be mindful with what you're doing in the garden. Yep. I think it works. So it's pretty cool to see that those same concepts and practices can work at scale for him Like I said, they created the largest CSA.
That's so cool.
They ship out millions of boxes of produce to people every single year.
That's
Millions.
incredible.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, I once subscribed way back, and now I think I got to do it again.
Well, it's like Netflix, but for food, right? You get a subscription service, but instead of sitting on your duff
not
all
to
day,
love?
you just all of a sudden you get a nice box of some
Shows
seasonal
up.
produce that's organic. Pretty cool. You're pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, before we run out of time, Kevin, I do want to actually check in with any current garden tasks that our listeners can be thinking about in the garden this week. We've had a lot of rain lately, but
Hooda lolly. Yeah.
I'm sure that there's things we should be thinking about, and I'm probably not thinking about them. So, Kevin, what do you got?
Well, that's what I'm here for. I appreciate you bringing it up. Prune. If you haven't already, your deciduous fruit trees need a good pruning right now. Your roses also, prune them as well. Some of your herbaceous perennials that may be a little bit spent from all the work they did last growing season, those can be pruned back. Things like your salvias and whatnot that are just spent, and you cut them back, and guess what? When things warm up here in the near future, they're going to appreciate you for it. That way, all the new growth doesn't have to push past all the old dead growth. Summer bulbs are in at Green Acres Nursery and Supply. They are in. The racks are beautiful, but if you want like things like gladiolas, all those beautiful summer blooming bulbs, you can get your hands on them right now. It's the best selection. And of course, start your seeds. I know we talk about it almost every week. But we're in a window right now where it's an amazing window for planting seeds. You can still get your peppers in. This is tomato season, and then we're just ramping things up to everything else. So get your hands on a seed calendar that is for your region, and you'll be just off and running. But plant seeds now. I've never regretted planting seeds, even when it's too much, because then I just give them away. It's fun. But then the last thing I got to say is roses and camellias. Right now is the best time to get your hands on them if you want to spruce up your landscape or your garden with a bit of color, some beauty. Camellias are great because they can get established over years and become shrubs or even smaller trees that are typically evergreen, but then will bloom a bit depending upon the variety of different colors. I know you have some around your neighborhood, Austin, that I've just, even right now in the rainy season, they're starting to pop.
Oh, they're
beautiful.
Amazing.
And of course, roses. We'll have to have a future episode, I'm sure, on it, but this is rose season. This is when we're pruning. This is when we're planting. There's so much to do right now in the garden. So please get after it. And not to mention, you can actually plant a lot of veggies right now as well. You can get your hands on some transplants.
Okay. Well, they're slowly coming out.
Yeah.
I think I've been visiting some of the behind the scenes work.
Oh, nice.
Out at Isley's, and the veggies are coming, and I'm making some videos on that stuff. It's exciting to see.
I'll send you a picture of my pepper seedlings are glowing in the light right now. They're under the grow lights at the school, and they're looking good. Looking really good.
Put that in the Facebook group.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
We're growing shishitos, jalafuegos, habanero.
Don't be shy, man.
I've been calling habaneros habaneros.
Oh, there's no enya on that end.
Yes, I'm a.
Come on, gringo.
I'm silly.
You'll get
I'm such a silly goose. Yeah, habaneros and everything in between. Of course, the sweet peppers as well.
Yeah.
But looking forward to it. So please. Prune, plant, and beyond. There's so much to do right now in the garden.
Love it. All right. Wow. What an awesome episode. I had a blast this week. Thank you to Thaddeus. Congrats to the Bug Program for continuing on. Let's visit there again. Thanks for the weekly tips, Kevin. Man, there's a lot here to dig into, and I had a blast. Why don't you go ahead and take us out?
Thank you so much to Thaddeus, our guest, but really, truly, thank you so much to all of you who are listening and tuning in each week. We really appreciate it. Please share us with a friend. Spread the word. Green Acres Garden Podcast. We're back, baby. Woo! It's going to be an amazing spring, and we want you here for every step of the way, garden friends. Please, in between those rainstorms, get out in that garden as you can. Get some dirt underneath those nails. Happy gardening to you all, and please, never stop growing.
Oh, this one feels good.